there is some real magic in the depth of relationship that you have with a woman and her family, and it's really beyond articulation. We know it works. It definitely works for our women and our families, and if you always put them in the very centre of what you do and how you work, that is when the magic happens.
And good evening to everybody, and welcome to the Maternity and Midwifery Hour. Here we are, session 12, series 6, and we're coming to the end of the series at the moment, but we've still got one more to go, and we're going to have a really fantastic evening this evening. My name's Sue MacDonald, and I'm in the happy position of being the curator for the Maternity and Midwifery Hour and the Maternity and Midwifery Festival. And I'm chairing tonight, and I'm going to really enjoy it. I've been really looking forward to this session, as I always do, because it's about learning something different and about hearing from fantastic speakers. And I have the plum speakers this evening, so it's really fantastic. I'm joined by Diane Garland, who many of you will know, and Jerry Hotham. Have I pronounced your name correctly, Jerry?
Hotham.
Jerry Hotham, or Geraldine, if we're being very formal. And as we always do, we always put our guests on the spot to share a moment of the week. And I'm going to start with Diane.
Oh.
Yes, you thought you were having a little snooze there.
I was thinking it was going to be Jerry first. Okay, two very quick ones then, if I may. One is on behalf of the community in my village. They've run a fantastic food bank all through this. We call it a community cupboard because it's less daunting than food bank, and they've just been given money to expand, which is good in some ways but sad in others. So well done to West Kingsdown Community Cupboard, well done to them.
Fabulous.
And then my personal one has got to be that as on Sunday I am doing my first international travel to teach in Spain after 2 years. So yeah, that I'm sure will go well.
And that's very exciting, and I should think there'll be masks on the way.
Yeah.
And all of that on the airplane and everything. Oh, wonderful! Thank you, Diane. And how about Jerry? What's your moment?
Mine's a little bit simpler, actually, not as exciting. Mine's to do with the first signs of spring. Thankfully, after a very long, hard winter, the tadpoles have hatched in my pond. The magnolia's out. The tulips are coming out, so it's starting to look like we're about to turn the corner weather-wise. And it's such a lovely, hopeful time, isn't it? Yeah. You feel better for looking at all these little signs. And frogs, fantastic. That's going to take care of all those slugs in the garden. So that's fantastic. Thank you so much. That's fantastic. Well, we're just going to go through the first few bits that we always do, which is just to remind everybody that we started the maternity hour at the beginning of the pandemic. So now we're coming into our third year of pandemic, because it's still officially that, even though some of the requirements have been reduced. So still stay careful, because we're very aware, and we were talking before the programme about the fact a lot of units are really busy because people are sick with COVID and their families are having sickness as well. So it's still around, and it means that other people are having to work and cover shifts. So big thank you to everyone, because you are just fantastic. And thank you for covering everywhere and looking after people. But look after yourself, as I always say, it's very important.
Now, because the maternity hour was started in the pandemic, it was a whole way of getting people connected together and getting information in a kind of digestible way, because we couldn't meet everyone face to face in festivals. We're just starting the festivals again. So we were in Dublin yesterday for the All Ireland Maternity and Midwifery Festival, which was fabulous. Met some fantastic midwives, fantastic students, lots of talking, lots of listening. It was lovely. But this is a way of still connecting. Everything's recorded and you can access it. It's all looked after by Mapflix, which is a fantastic resource for anyone who's doing a study, or if you've got to do a project, if you're a student, you've got assignments to do, or if you have a revalidation you've got to finish. This is where you can go, and it's very accessible and it's very useful, and it's enjoyable actually, mostly because you can learn it in a comfortable way at your own speed, wherever you want, and you can share. And we really like that people can take the material and share with their colleagues and really learn together. So that's fantastic. So we'll just say a big thank you to our NHS colleagues in general, and particularly maternity services, and everyone who's working so hard at the moment. And we're very knowledgeable about the fact people are tired. Everyone's tired. It's been a long time, and it does feel as though there's no let up. So look for some little bits in your life that make you feel a bit better, like looking for the tadpoles, like looking at the tulips, like looking, at the food bank. That they've done something fantastic. It's very positive as well, and you're doing positive stuff, so that's fantastic. Now I'm moving swiftly onto news, and of course, well, you didn't know today maybe that today is National Doctors' Day. So well done to our doctors, because we like to work with them. We need to carry on working together and learning together, because the other big news, of course, is the Ochenton report that's been published, which is a huge piece of work. And you'll know that it was started now, I think, in 2017, with a remit to look at some cases of baby deaths and women who were reporting bad experiences. And they began with 23 cases, and which included cases of concern which were raised by the families or the parents of Kate Stanton Davis and Pippa Griffiths. But this was extended to quite a lot of families, some 1,486 between 2000 and 2019. And then it's come up to 1,592 cases that they've looked at. So you can imagine it's a big report. And I've got a little sort of edited highlights here, because I want to spend some time just going through it, and I'll feed back a little bit more next week, as I get through it. But it includes looking at baby deaths and babies born who have been born with some damage, and maternal deaths that happened in Shrewsbury and Telford. And really what was very sad is that it showed repeated poor care and a tendency not to learn from mistakes, which is a great pity, and it's something we need to address. And it's painful, I think. And I think we were talking a bit earlier about that it's very uncomfortable reading. It's very uncomfortable to think that your colleagues may have not been able to achieve what they wanted to achieve, because nobody goes to work to do a bad job, basically. And we need to be strong in ourselves to acknowledge where things have gone wrong and actually look at what we can do to get better. Because things like repeated errors, lack of skill in clinical care, and also lack of referral to multidisciplinary teams. And we're kind of getting better at that, but we've obviously, in this case, not done it as well as we could have done. And the biggest thing, I think, was, for me, the thing that I heard the most today was the need to listen to women and listen to families and what they're saying. And I think if we can carry on doing that and be strong and work with them, we'll get through this together. And I think that's really important. And there's something like 60 local actions for learning that Donna Ochenton has kind of printed out. And we need to look at those and see if we can build them into what we learn our continuing professional development. And we'll be certainly looking at that for the maternity hour to see if there's anything we can do to help support our colleagues out there. But I'm going to say listen to women and their families, because that really is crucial. And of course, we've still got this terrible invasion in Ukraine. You notice I'm wearing my little yellow and blue daisy, and we've got colours behind both of our speakers, which are talking about the blue and yellow of Ukraine. We're with them. And it's awful to think of people having to fight for their lives. And it's always the women and children that suffer, of course, through these wars. And we're praying for peace, basically, because that's the most important thing. So I've moved through, I feel as though I've chased through that, but I just wanted to sort of really highlight the things that are happening at the moment for you. But also tonight, we're going to look at slightly different things. We're going to be looking at supporting parents, women and parents, antenatally and through antenatal education. And this is very much part of what happened during the lockdown, because one of the problems, or one of the issues, was as midwives, we had to do things slightly differently. We had to find ways of connecting with women and making sure they felt prepared for their experience with the maternity services. And one of the issues was, of course, with the antenatal education and Parentcraft education and making it accessible and all of those things. And a lot of things went online, which is what we're doing now. So we're going to look at inspiring and supporting mothers and families and moving Parentcraft online. Of course, we know some of these things are going to stay online, maybe. And let's listen. We're going to listen to our speakers and we're going to make a judgment on that. And so it's fantastic. I've got two fantastic speakers. And the first one, and I'm so pleased to introduce Geraldine Hotham, or Jerry, I'm going to call her because it's much easier. She's actually was a teacher before she came into midwifery, practiced for quite a long time, then went back into education because she's a very rounded person, and then she came back to midwifery. Thank goodness. She's taught children and adults and teenagers, which is quite a challenge, I would say. And she's worked in lots of trusts as a midwife. She's been a childminder. She's worked with adults with learning disabilities, and they've all contributed to her empathy and understanding the diversity of people's experiences of life. So she's now at this point that very committed to supporting women to make positive transitions to parenthood as positive as possible, and bringing this in her new role in parent education in Hull during these very challenging times. So welcome, Jerry. The screen is now yours, and I'm so pleased that you're with us this evening to share what you're up to up in Hull. And we always have this fun of
just
getting
had this
screens
moment
up.
of me getting the screen up.
Wonderful.
Okay, good evening. It is a pleasure to be talking to you. I've had that very nice introduction. Thank you very much. I'll pick up straight away, really, with what you said about listening to women, because that has to be our central message for everything that we do. I'm very new to the post in parent education in Hull. So this is talking really about plans that I have for developing the offer we have rather than what we've done. But I started with listening to the voices of the participants from the online antenatal classes and evaluating the feedback when I came into the role. So I've been tussling with this because the teacher in me is kind of thinking about health education models and pedagogical issues, and the midwife in me is thinking about the key messages that we need to get across. The human in me is thinking about how difficult it is for women at the moment making this step into parenthood. Many of the women we meet are first-time parents, and a lot of the social network that they have or might expect is not there. So really, it doesn't matter how I approach it. The question is how to be most effective. So I took the simplest route because that's the route I always like to take. And I looked at the feedback. So it is an evaluation. It is not an academic analysis of the feedback. I've kind of done it numerically, but not as a data analysis. I've taken the number of comments and the scope of comments and used it to develop this presentation and our approach from now on. So the sessions, I don't know how you feel about on antenatal education classes, but I feel it's actually quite difficult to define what we are trying to do. It's a generic offer, the one we do with the usual antenatal classes. People have very diverse expectations, diverse needs. They have different ways they prefer to conduct their learning. Research shows that they're not actually sure what they want to learn. And in a face-to-face class all the time, then you are formatively assessing what people want. You're getting back from them what they think they are getting out of the session. We haven't got the capacity to do that online. So a little bit, this feedback is my way of formatively assessing what people have been getting in their classes. So let's see if this slide moves for me. Get the slide to move along. Well, okay, I will skip it because I don't want to waste time trying to deal with technology here. Oh, okay. So the first thing that came back then, the main finding that came back, interestingly, is what was important to people with the online sessions is the personality of the birth educator. People commented on the warmth of their birth educator, the approachability. They really appreciated humour. They really appreciated the depth of knowledge. So this has given me quite a basis for my approach, and that I think that shows me that there is quite a lot of value in staying with quite an informal and quite a simple approach. But the best way to support that is to allow the personalities of the birth educators to flourish. And that can be done through team meetings, sharing ideas, sharing good feedback, sharing some of the developmental feedback. But actually, that is our core of value of our birth education classes, the personality and the knowledge of the birth educators. So that's definitely came through strongly. Second thing that people asked for was that we go back to face-to-face classes, unsurprisingly. So at the moment, we're not in a position to go back to face-to-face classes. So what we need to do is optimize the sessions that we have and think about what people value about the face-to-faceness of those sessions. They value the support of the birth educator and the values of the support of their peers. So how do we generate a community, a sense of a group and humour and a bit of reciprocity in an online session? Introductions can be very, very intimidating. Some of the women, for good reason in many cases, sit there with their cameras off. That can have a bit of a domino effect, the birth educators have found. So we have to think about how we are going to bring the group with us and encourage them to sort of buy into the group dynamic. So I think it is a good idea to start the session with actually explaining that not everybody will like all of the different methods of teaching that we use, but ask them to roll with it and support each other. Always, a bit of humour helps. So again, that has to be very non-threatening if you ask people to contribute. So you could ask, you would ask in the email that goes out prior to the session that people have a pen and paper, and then they can write a contribution on there and hold it up so they don't have to speak. And always, again, make those, it's not a question and answer, they're not expressing, they're not passing a test. So we can help, say, in a discussion about the latent phase of labour in the birth class, commonly asked question, what song would you dance to during the latent phase? But then you don't want people to feel under pressure about that. So bring that back to you and say, okay, so I'm going to write down a couple of my suggestions. Let me see if I can guess what any of you have written. So then even if you don't get money contributions back, you've got your bit, you're not relying on them, which is quite key. So I kind of say, this is mine. This might be mine. Rihanna is redefining pregnancy, I gather, at the moment. So that would be something which people could contribute to on a very, very basic level. And then that can be a bit of an icebreaker, and it can start you with other discussions. So for example, if you're asking people to draw their understanding of the changes of the cervix during induction, that can lead you into an explanation about, I always use the analogy of turning an old tank around, as to why it might take such a long time to start that induction process before you get to the active phase of labour. And then quite often, when it's a humorous and light-hearted session, then the participants will start to communicate with each other, just you, and I've started up my WhatsApp groups and arranged some meetings. It doesn't always happen, but you just have to try and facilitate it wherever you can. So technology is the next thing that needs to be, that is fed back by people and commented on a lot. What's fed back quite frequently is that people dislike any heavy technology, any glitches, delays, any links that they have to click on, and it can literally be a turn off. And having struggled with the technology in the session today, I would concur. So I don't think we want our sessions to replicate work life. We don't want people to feel that they're on a work training course. So my feeling is that it shouldn't be very teacherly. And unless you are very confident about resolving technical glitches, probably keep it very straightforward and as basic as you can. And my presentation this evening is very basic and deliberately so, which is quite lucky because it is the way I teach anyway. But I think it needs to be something that is very straightforward, and the technology for me would be a support, not leading. If you were very confident with it, that might be different. The other, obviously, it is central, and a lot of people love technology, and I will talk about it a little bit. So I wouldn't say don't use it at all, but I would use something very simple like Padlet, which is an instant notice board that people can pin to. And again, that gives them the anonymity, but they can contribute without pressure. And what it does is it gives people the opportunity to contribute in real time and have a meaningful role for the technology in the session. The PowerPoint, again, it's useful because it can give you visual cues, but it needs, and it can be changed colour for the backgrounds if people struggle with reading on a white background. But it's also very useful for being able to send to people so that you can have links on it, you can have additional text that they can follow up, and they like to follow up the next week with some of the bits of information that they've had. So if people are very slick, I know that there are some wonderful Eventbrite sessions, Nearpod, etc. But unless it's very slick, I would keep it very simple personally, and remember the feedback of the humanity and the personality of the birth educator. The next area of feedback was that it combines two things that people talked about. One is that people love to participate in a demonstration, and they like to have some follow-up of information. So demonstrations for things like baby bathing and practical skills, quite difficult online. And I think that we possibly need to adapt those a little bit to help people build up their confidence, which is clearly what's the most important part of those demonstrations. I'm going to use the example of breastfeeding, because the breastfeeding we'd usually do with a doll and a knitted breast. Now, I'm not really sure how that transfers to a video. So think about how you might simplify it, might make it more accessible. And so I would sort of use, say, my hand to replicate the breast, and how you can see that in front of my face, and explain that this is your breast, here is the nipple. The milk is actually in ducts behind. If the baby is on the nipple, it will just rub and make you sore. It will not be able to pull the milk out. You need to get behind the nipple to be able to help, to be able to replicate that movement of the baby, and explain about the tongue actually pushing the milk forwards. And then people can relate to it, and then you can have a video to follow up. There's a hyperlink there for a follow-up video to have a look at it again and give people a little bit more information. And that, I think, works better than some of the processes where we just carry on doing what we have done in the class with the equipment that we have. So my second example, it was nice to have an example, is my baby. So I'd have a formal demonstration of a baby with a baby bath, considering my camera angles and things. and again a hyperlink so they could follow it again in more detail. But just as a fun thing and something that they may be able to replicate at home, I have my own baby here, which I have made out of a melon and a butternut squash. So people could make that if they wanted to, and it's surprising how much people do. Then you can have a bit of a hoot about naming the baby, and you can talk to them about the baby's head needing support, how heavy it is, and how little support the baby has can give it itself. This actually replicates the weight of a baby. So if they're going to have a practice at home, this is about as an effective a way of doing it, rather than using a doll which doesn't move like a baby does and doesn't feel like a baby does. So again, a bit of humour, it always helps break the ice for people. So those are the practicalities of the things that we're addressing in the short term to make it more immediate, more accessible, respond to the feedback that we're getting, and think now about how that will impact on our future developments. Because obviously, although we do want to go back to face-to-face, and we know that the women would like to go back to face-to-face sessions, I think some people are enjoying the online sessions, and I think realistically we know that we will be keeping the online sessions in some form, and they are valuable in some form. So what we're looking to is developing a blended offer of some face-to-face and maintaining the online lessons as well. And this means that it's quite a robust service. So if, say, we go back into lockdown, we have that structure in place. We're thinking about piloting, rather than evening sessions 4 weeks in a row, one-off session, and then people could then revisit areas of it, say the birth prep, in an online session that they could just dip into as a one-off, or they could repeat them as often as they wanted to if they felt that was useful to them. And online we would have the slides which would have videos, demonstrations, links to leaflets, links to the local maternity service, on websites and so on, and to make that as flexible and as sort of holistic as we can. I think we will definitely always need to have some bespoke sessions for some groups of women, and we will need to have some one-to-one sessions. Like I say, I'm very aware in this feedback of who we're not hearing from and how we might provide them with some kind of care and support. And the other thing that I've just to finish with, the other thing that is my current passion is that I am wanting to introduce an early pregnancy session, a one-off early pregnancy session, which in the first instance will be an online session, and hopefully we'll go to face-to-face in the different areas, because I feel that women have this, they have the booking appointment and then they have this long wait to the 16-week appointment, and in the middle of that they have the excitement of the dating scan, and at that point they're very excited, they're very hungry for knowledge, they're very motivated to make lifestyle changes. By the time we see them at 25, 30 weeks, that ship has sailed. So we need to really get in there and provide women with support at the time they want. And I think this is where I'm talking, I mentioned about how I think technology needs to be very slick, and it's going to take a lot of resource and a lot of time, but this is something that I'm wanting to develop. I've just done a quick mock-up for you here. As you can see, people would have a personalized page with their own photograph. Again, Rihanna, Redefining Pregnancy for Us is on there. But on here it has little access points which are specific to that person. And like I say, it could be customized for the people. So for example, if you click onto an information leaflet, this one is an information leaflet which would be our standard one on routine bloods at booking. So there's a standardized one, there is an easy read one, which also could be very useful for translation. And then we've also got the support of our learning disability nurse, and are developing the easy read, the accessible communication standards with the appropriate widgets and things, so that hopefully people will be able to customize these to be perfectly formed for them. So mixture of online and face-to-face is my feeling. My key message would be, keep it simple, keep it to your comfort zone in terms of technology, and really think about the form that you are delivering the form of your demonstrations and your explanations, and possibly adapt them a little bit. And lastly, take the responsibility for the generating the energy of the session for you, to yourself. Do the best you can. Thank you.
Fabulous, Jerry. Really good. I like the in particularly the generating the energy, because it kind of takes it away from just being a recorded or feeling like a recorded version. That's fantastic. Now I'll just say to the audience, and we've got people from all over the world watching. So hello to everybody. We've got people from Belgium, Guyana, and Turkey, as well as the UK. So hello to everybody. I hope you're enjoying it and find it useful. So thank you, Jerry. Now, audience, if you have questions, please send them in, and we'll have a bit at the end that we can answer the questions. So I'm going to move speedily to Diane Garland, who many of you will know because we've had her on before. She's multi-skilled, this woman, like all of our midwives. Anyway, so Diane has a passion for midwifery and water birth. You'll know her from her water birth sessions. Having spent over 40 years in the NHS, she started her own company, her midwife expert, I should say, in 2005. Great resource, actually, there. So she's got a good website you can go to. And that allows her the freedom to explore midwifery with a global perspective, which is why she's going off somewhere on Sunday, while focusing on areas of practice innovation, development, and education. And Diane works clinically in her local hospital, supporting low and high risk or high complex needs mums and babies through childbirth. She's also had 4 books published on water birth, and she's also a fellow of the RCM. So welcome this evening, Diane, and I will say the screen is now yours.
Thank you very much. Like Jerry was saying, good old technology, and mine went on the blip, so the slides are going to be like the Chris Whitty. I'll be asking Amy to do the next slide. Enough to say about myself there, and I thank you, Sue, for picking those bits up. But I'm a freelance midwife, and I purposely use that not independent, because our independent colleagues have different roles to what I do. So if people wonder why it says freelance, it's because my role is very different. Next slide, please, Amy. So there we go. So it works just like Chris Whitty. We're better than Chris Whitty. So, of course, why did I have to change? I was already doing a lot of face-to-face parent education, general parent education, and, as you can probably guess, water births. But, of course, COVID hit with just like a huge truck coming out of the blue. And overnight, not only did it have a huge impact on other issues like continuity of care and home births and water births and lots of other things, birth centres being closed, but for me, my beautiful venue that I usually use for teaching was literally shut overnight. No warning, that was it. So I had to very quickly find a different way to be able to provide some sort of high quality education. And this is my journey of what I've done and continue to, and like Jerry, probably will continue for some time to come. Next slide, please. So this was something that was said to me by several of the mothers who sadly I had to postpone because literally we were shut overnight. And women said they'd already felt very isolated and lonely, and the loss of the antenatal education, which again, Jerry said, you know, we do find women who do make friends for life in antenatal education. And because it was shut down, literally, we just felt that that loneliness and isolation was compounded. So I was very keen to do what I could to try and help that. So I discovered Zoom over 2 years ago, just over 2 now, because I started my first Zoom in March. I'd never even heard of Zoom. I wouldn't have known what it was. My nephew always used to laugh and say, you don't even know what Wi-Fi is, because I used to call it woofy. So goes back to the laughters bit again. So Zoom for me, and please bear in mind that I am freelance, it had to be a media that was cost effective. And many of the other medias like Teams and Blue Button were just too expensive. So it had to be cost effective for me, because then of course it's the cost effectiveness for parents, because they pay for my services. What they get in return for the cost effectiveness from their point of view, and it was something I learned very quickly, was that I send out a copy of the slides with links at least a week before the class is due to start. So they have a chance to look through, they have a chance hopefully to write down their questions. If they are someone who's shy, again, just like Jerry, they know they can email me back and I will have those questions there, but don't have to say Jerry said or Jerry asked. It's much, much easier for those people who are very, very shy. And a lot of people are. Anyone who does classes will know that. Now, because I'm private, I'm a freelance midwife, I have to make sure that everything I do is covered by my professional private insurance. I've spoken to lots of colleagues since all this started, and a lot of midwives did not realise that their professional indemnity, whether it's with the RCM or Unison, would not cover them outside their workplace, which probably for most of us would be the NHS. Now that was something that I knew because I already had the insurance up and running. So it's just a plea. Please do not assume that your current indemnity would cover you outside, because it won't. I have to say I've never been sued, so I guess that's the positive. And I have to tell you, it's not cheap. So this is not a cheap way of thinking, oh, that's, you know, really good. It had to be easy to use. Now, it had to be easy to use for me, hence the glitches tonight. But of course, it had to be easy and accessible and low cost for the parents who were joining. And all of them have said that Zoom has been a really good, easy access for them. It's a pretty stable media. Some other medias are not so good. Big Blue Button, which is used a lot in America, and so if I'm teaching there, they always want Big Blue Button. I don't find it very stable, and there's nothing more than annoying. And it does happen where the speaker, me, the parents, them, can get thrown out, as in, you know, the system collapses. And I just tell them, don't worry, go and get a coffee, reboot it, and it will come back up. So it's being flexible as well. I do keep it to very small groups, and I make it as interactive as is at all possible on a Zoom platform. But the comments I've had back, and they come back through emails, unlike Jerry, I haven't done a big formal assessment, but the evaluations that come back from the parents have been very positive. The interactive bit, the other side as well, and you can't see me today, which is a bit of a shame, because one of the things is the interaction must be appropriate. Now, I've got my door shut to my office. I've also got the cat shut away. The number of times, which is quite amusing, makes people laugh. My cat loves to come in. He usually sits on the keyboard, which totally messes everything up. So it's simple things like that, you know, making sure parents try and have an environment. I have no problem if children come in and join in. We've certainly had lots of different pets, but it's about just being aware of those interruptions that might interrupt the interactive part of it. Thank you. So here's our problems. Technology stability. It's been pretty good, but of course, you know, all of these platforms, some have developed very, very quickly and some have readapted quickly. Others are still a bit unstable. The issue as well about having access. So I have run the classes at different times and different days of the week. So usually whoever the first couple of people who approach me, I will say to them, what's a good time and day? So I have literally done them mornings, afternoons, evenings, every day of the week. And because of that, sometimes you get more uptake than others, but it's quite surprising how many people seem to like Saturday afternoon. And especially during lockdown, the weekends were very popular. So I did a lot at the weekends. Data protection. really important for me. All of my participants, the parents, will obviously have my email details. I tell them that I only keep their emails until after the session, and then I delete it. And I think that's important for them to know, because remember, I'm doing this privately. If you are going to develop something like this, talk to your trust communications department. Some trusts were really quick and really good at getting their IT up and running and being able to do classes. Sadly, others were not. And that's really sad, because they've often been redirected to other systems that were not as good as they might have been. They weren't homegrown. And of course, advertising. Really careful, obviously, as a freelance midwife, how and where I advertise. Next slide, please. I'm not going to go through content because it's fairly standard, but I've just put a few pictures on. The parent slides that are identical to mine, except they don't get any pictures that are not stock photos of something like Google Images. And that's to protect the parents, unless they sent me photos about their birth, and with permission, which of course I make sure the parents who are watching know, will be aware of that protection for parents. One of the things that has been a challenge, and Jerry said it as well, is being able to demonstrate things on Zoom. I did try and do some physiology right at the beginning with a normal sized doll and pelvis, and it just didn't work. But I've got a very tiny one that I've had most of my career, and she works beautifully because she's literally only the size of my hand. So again, that's why I like that photo of having your baby at home in your hand. But certainly, yes, trying to show parents things can be quite challenging. Okay, next slide, please. So what's been very important during COVID? Well, there's some obvious things. And I think with all of the teaching, we've been trying to share that a lot of what we share about COVID and the things below it is what we can only describe as best advice. Much of the information is not yet evidence-based. And I think parents enjoy the fact that I'm honest with them, whereas normally we're saying this is evidence-based and here's the reference if you want to look at it. But much of the work has not yet been. It's not been around long enough. It's a new virus still. It's only, what, 3.5 years old. So it's not been around long enough yet. But with the best advice we can give, we do know that skin to skin, of course, is important. Optimal cord clamping, the microbiome does not appear to be affected by COVID, and of course the breastfeeding values anyway. So I do stress that to parents. This is best advice. It's not evidence-based. And then of course we get to the use of the internet. So I put links as well on my slides, depending on what type of session I'm doing. I do always check the films. I check their credibility and the content. Now that might sound obvious, but it is surprise what is out there. So I would never put anything on as a link. And then I warn parents that there are more links that will come from that one that I've sent them, and they need to be very clear of where it's come from. Midwifery and childbirth around the world, believe you me, as I'm sure many of you will know, is very different. I do lots of links to charities, particularly charities that will help perhaps with things like if women have got pelvic girdle pain. That's a really good website. Because this is antenatal, remember, so it's not going to be necessarily the links that they'll want for birth trauma, which we hope things, you know, may improve, sadly, because of the Ochenton Report again. And of course, advocacy groups, so things like AIMS and Birthright, which do lead on beautifully to the next slide, please. And there we are. We've had a plethora of books from some of the advocacy groups and individuals in the last 2 years. Now, I suspect a lot of that is because, like many of us, we're working from home. And so those books I do share with parents. None of them are expensive. I do say, you know, I don't expect parents to go out, but they should be able to get access to them. And I have copies of them. And if a parent is very interested, I'm always very happy to share them and send them out. That was, oh, just go back now. Thank you. Yeah, I was just going to say that lovely quote as my sort of almost finish. I found that it's from a Chinese philosopher, and I just thought it was really good. Maybe it should read she rather than he, but he who knows others is wise. He who knows himself is enlightened. And a lot of what I teach is about women taking back responsibility, as some of those books will, you know, their own rights over their own bodies, their birth and their babies. And I have to say, Sue kindly said, you know, I've been a midwife a long time. Next slide, please. And it's sad how we have taken away that responsibility from women, and now we're trying to reintroduce it and bring it back for women. And that can be very hard when you've got a long culture of the responsibility and everything coming from us. So that's a real challenge, I think, for a lot of women, particularly women from other cultures. And of course, we are an incredibly mixed demography nowadays, and will continue to be, as sadly things like Ukraine and that carry on. So that's me. You can contact me. Sue knows I love traveling. That was a cruise to Alaska, obviously pre-COVID. And yeah, that's me. Thank you.
Lovely, 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 lovely. Thank you so much. That was fantastic. What a wonderful kind of, you've both managed to get so much in such a short time. So you are splendiferous, the pair of you. Fantastic. And there are a couple of questions coming in. So now, just to remind the audience, which is why I'm moving away, I'm not being rude to you. I have another screen. I'm Sue, two screens here. And I had the questions come through on the other screen. So I have Carmel Connolly. Hi, Carmel. And she says, do you limit numbers attending classes? Now that one, I think for both of you, but should we start with Jerry?
I think the number on Zoom classes is about 12. And I think that seems to be the comfortable number, particularly if some people have turned the screens off. And I have to say, I don't know if you find this, Diane, but our birth educators have found that nearly always there will be the odd person who turns their screen off. So that seems to be able to generate enough of a sort of energy to have people not feel lost and like a tiny little bit of it, but have enough energy for the class to sort of keep going. It's about 12.
Yeah, and mine are much smaller, probably for obvious reasons. So I think the biggest group I had was 10 couples, but I sometimes have almost done them one-to-one because people have dropped out. You know, things happen, babies come early. But I try and go with a minimum of 3. So there is some degree, hopefully, interaction. But obviously, again, you know, people do turn their cameras off, and I sometimes go, "Yoo-hoo, are you still there?" But sometimes that is about the stability of their equipment. Yeah.
And people being shy.
I
mean, it's like it must be a very big challenge for when people came into the face-to-face to meet different people, because you know, whenever you go to anything, any of us, you know, we've got our little face that we can put on as we sweep in, but it's still, you know, a challenge to meet new people.
It is stuff. It is, isn't it? And initially, if people come into a room, you're able to ease their way in, aren't you? Sort of go over and speak to them, have a cup of tea, you know, where have you come from, all of that sort of very gentle chat that just sort of choose where you're going to sit, or I like that seat best, you know, all of those sorts of chats. You don't get the chance to do. So it's thinking about how you can do a similar thing online without making people feel on the spot.
No, that's good. Okay, well, thank you for that. Okay, I'm going to have we have someone from Turkey, and that is Yeliz. Hi, Yeliz. And she said, I read Parent Education Midwife and wonder if you've attended any special education apart from basic midwifery education. This is a really good question, Yeliz. In my country, all midwives can educate parents. I think I know the answer to that, but I'll start this time with Diane.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I first started, I had just finished my PGCEA, which is my educational certificate, but I'd always been sort of a bit gregarious and outgoing, and I never minded being the one on the screen, as you can probably tell. But yes, I mean, and it was bringing other people in, so we didn't do any formal, but once we started, we were doing teams way back in 1993, and part of that team concept was that they did their own parent education. So you always find the one who's happy to be the leader, but we wanted to draw everyone in, so we did. I was practice developed midwife by then, so what we did was we actually did sessions about teaching, and how you can be quite dynamic even if you're the quiet person. So yeah, we did it internally rather than doing a course.
Okay, how about Jerry?
Yeah, I think it tends to be an internal thing, doesn't it? And that very often people kind of choose themselves. And I know a lot of antenatal teaching is done by nursery nurses in children's centres, and they're brilliant. They're absolutely brilliant at it because they know the job inside out. They are so knowledgeable. They know the women, and they are very slick and very outgoing, and they kind of choose themselves, really.
Yeah, I agree.
There are some qualifications that you can get on the pedant qualifications of mixed value, I would say. I think this is very, very interesting to be able to consider the way you teach and the way people will receive the information, and think about your objectives, but you can do that informally as well. And I think there are some very skilled people who haven't necessarily had the formal teacher training, who are just kind of natural teachers.
Yeah, I think we actually might look a bit odd, not odd, but we're all teachers and we've all done Parentcraft, which might give Yeliz the idea that you have to be. But I think it's more about what people like to do, because in the new standards, I think teaching, this is new out in 2019, teaching is very much part of what midwives in the UK are prepared to do. But sorry, Diane, I interrupted you.
I was only about to say about the students, I've always encouraged the students face to face, and even now on Zoom, that if they want to come, we don't overwhelm. When I used to do face to face and it was like Jerry and maybe 12 couples, I'd only ever have one student, because it's not for the student. And I used to say, if you want to ask questions, hang on to them till the coffee breaks when we can chat. Or at the end of the session. And it's the same with the Zoom, hang on, wait till everyone else goes and then ask your questions, or email me, because it isn't just for them, it's for them to actually see the interaction and how we draw people in.
Get those skills.
Part of my role when I was appointed, in the job description, is actually to work with students at the local university and do some parent education with them. So that will be a really, really exciting part of the role, actually.
Because I have to say, I think one of the great things for me about doing a teaching course was it gave me the confidence to try things out that I wouldn't have thought of. Because if you're doing a formal course, you're told about the theory of teaching, and then you're given some tools, and then you're given kind of permission to try things. So it's
we were all told we had to have an everyday object that we had to then sell. Yes, so I had a cucumber. And I had to find creative ways that I could sell the cucumber with an education hat on, which was quite good fun.
Okay. Well, I think this could be homework for our audience.
Just
practicing with a couple of people. And Jerry's got
never knock an everyday object.
She's brought her friend.
He's fine. Look.
Well, I've got a doll like Diane's, and I love that little doll because you can have it in your pocket. And I think the idea of the butternut squash is a wonderful, and a melon is wonderful, because you'd have to call the baby Melanie, wouldn't you?
Yeah, you would. Good.
Okay, I've got another question, but thank you, Liz. That's got us all thinking, and I'm thinking about my memories of all of this, and it's lovely. So thank you for that. And we've got lovely Jo Jaguston. Hi, Jo. And she says, question for Jerry. Great presentation. Yes, it was.
Thank you.
Thank you. I really love the way you're thinking of making your offer available to service users when they want it, i.e. earlier on. It's that sort of approach that struck me as really better births. Yay!
Oh, great. Yes.
So thank you for that, Jo. Did you want to comment about that, Jerry?
Oh, thank you. I think we should all be doing it.
Yeah, I thought that was a really nice idea, because it's tapping into that excitement. That's
Yes.
really, that was lovely.
And years ago, so we used to go into the schools.
Yeah.
I can remember going into the schools and taking a doll and a pelvis and lots of things in my bag, and it just and it was boys and girls, of course. It wasn't just girls. And that was fantastic, because it took away the fear of getting pregnant, but we could get the health education, which Jerry talked about. We could get the health education across as well, in very different times. You know, probably a lot of what we would then do, we probably wouldn't be allowed to do now.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm only a few weeks in, but this is my kind of medium-term goal. But actually looking ahead, I would love to do a preconception roadshow and take it to festivals and nightclubs and things. And actually, I think women are very, very interested in sharing information like your health, your baby's health is impacted by your health pre-conception. How much you drink now will impact on your baby. How much your mother's health would impact on your health and your baby's health. And so this is how you can affect the sort of future generations. And attachment theory, people find it absolutely fascinating. So I think there's a massive potential. You know, I mean, there is no limit to how much we can do, just how much we're able to do, really.
It's just the time in a day.
Resource,
Jerry, easy now.
Yeah.
I'm seeing her going off on this roadshow now.
I'll come to Spain.
Wonderful. And then I'm not sure if this is also from Jo, because it says continued. How does this all fit with continuity of care ambition, please?
Yeah, great one. I mean, that was what we used to do, and they were doing it obviously pre-COVID, but because like so many trusts, our trust was hit with high levels of staff with COVID. So a lot of the, it's not fair to call the other stuff not quality, but we talked about quality education. That just went by the by. It just went. And so that's what I said. Women were telling me how lonely and isolated they felt. So that would be, you know, the agenda for our teams, that they do their own parent education. And I'm sure, Jerry, you're the same.
Yeah, well, it's a mixture actually in our area, but it is continuity, isn't it? Because the women that you meet at those early pregnancy sessions may well be the women that you meet later on, and you will understand their context. I think we have to have some bespoke sessions for sort of more vulnerable groups who might have been referred or self-referred or referred by specialist midwives. And so we can support those women as part of their continuity pathway and work with the midwives. I mean, one thing that struck me actually when that question was asked is that one of the continuity teams in my trust was reporting the other day that they have got the lowest ever smoking rate at the moment. They've had a lot of impact with this smoking cessation, which they're putting down to the continuity team. But again, if we are sort of complementing that by having the early pregnancy session where we can talk to people about smoking cessation and channel them towards the specialist midwife and their local services, then it can only sort of help if we sort of dovetail our services.
Absolutely.
Fabulous. Okay, we've still got some questions coming. We've got Lola Ornato. Hi, Lola. It's all these old friends. It's wonderful. And she says, do you find there are any main advantages or disadvantages to teaching online? We'll start now with Jerry first.
Well, I think advantages is that you can accommodate people in their sort of more flexibly. That is an advantage, certainly. And I think the advantage is that there are a few people who access it who wouldn't necessarily come to a class. Which I don't know if you would agree, Diane.
Yeah.
So there are some advantages, and we shouldn't overlook those. The disadvantage is it's the support. I would have to say that would be the main one. I mean, technological glitches are very frustrating,
Yes.
but I think the loss of support for women during their pregnancy, and like Diane said, those friendships that some people forge are so important. It's a tremendous loss.
Yeah. And I would, reiterate that. I think the other thing, and that's what I found, is that, sometimes women say, oh, hang on, my partner's here, but he wouldn't have come to a class, but because you're running it at 5:30 on a Saturday afternoon, I don't watch football, so I've no idea if that's football time, they will join in and they will come. And it's nice because you often see, well, maybe the mother's listening, he'll come in with a drink for her. So all of that, and then you can say, well, that's really nice, thank you. Is there anything exciting in the drink? And off you can go on to that angle. And I've certainly had same-sex couples there. I've certainly had women there with their mums. And again, because of even when the venues were open, I had to limit how many people could come. But of course, if they can sit them all on a settee together or hear or watch. So, I do think there are benefits. But I think, like you, one would hope we'll do a blending of, online and face-to-face.
Yeah. Well, someone's asking about now. Carmel Connolly was asking about whether you find breakout rooms useful.
I haven't used them.
No, and I haven't. I mean, my sessions are not that long, so no, we don't use breakouts.
No, I'm aware that some education that teaching students use them, and there's pros and cons also for that. So. And aimed again, Joe again, D'Augustin is saying, comment for Diane this time. I've read a lot that you've written. Wonderful to meet you in person. Loving the positive energy. Lucky people who attend your courses. Isn't that lovely? Thank you, Joe. How lovely. Okay, and then we've got a comment from Sinead, who says, we're trying to implement standards for antenatal education here in Ireland. So nationally, we can have a standard SEER, I'm not sure what that means, curriculum for parents and for midwives to teach using adult learning styles. So that's just a comment. Thank you very much, Sinead. And then Michelle Waldron, and I think this will have to be our last question because we're running out of time, says, hi, Jerry, did you evaluate what midwives thought of online facilitation, what they learned from teaching online? Thank you for all she says. Michelle, that's a wonderful question.
It is a wonderful question. I haven't evaluated it, but I have surveyed them. And they are, some of them they're pretty much split down the middle. So when we've discussed developing things in the future, one has said definitely count me in for the online. One has said definitely I want to do the face-to-face. We've had somebody who will join us if we go face-to-face. So I think they are mixed, but it's more to do, I think, with their personal circumstances, because like people attending the classes, people have got their own pressures when they're teaching as well.
Absolutely.
And so that suits some birth educators better than others to do it online as well.
Yes,
fabulous. Thank you.
So what we're hoping to do, sorry, just to say, is to play to people's strengths. That's it. That's it.
And also, I guess, gain in confidence, because it's a bit like the work that we've all had to do online for interviewing women, doing their booking online and that sort of thing. When you first do it, it's a bit weird and a bit, is it going to work? And, trying it out. And I think you've given us all the energy and the commitment to have a go. I think you've got us fantastic ideas. Where's that butternut squash and that little dolly? Fantastic. So thank you so much to Diane and Jerry for joining us this evening. I think we'll have to have them back. We'll have to have Jerry back when she's done a little bit more. And especially when maybe she's moving on to that old road show. I like the sound of that. That sounds really fabulous. And definitely we'll have you back. Once I've got you in my claws, you can't escape. I always say that, but it's true. And now just to tell everybody, you can get the resources online. I'm sure you found those already, which has also got the link to the Ochenton Report. Beware, don't press print if you've not got very much printer cartridge left, because it's nearly 300 pages, a lot, big document, but it's worth reading, but you might want to download it instead. Next week we'll be here. It'll be the last in the series. And then if you need to book for your Midlands Maternity and Midwifery Festival on the 26th of April in Birmingham, and Manchester on the 21st of June. And so if you haven't put a paper in, it's time to put in a paper. And you do register, because if you can make it, that'd be fabulous, face to face. If you can be online, that's also fabulous. Just look at how good this is tonight. And you can, as long as you're registered, you get your box set through your Matflix, which is fantastic. So thank you very much to our wonderful speakers. Thank you to Amy for looking after behind the scenes, which is fantastic. And in the meantime, for our audience, please stay safe, look after yourselves, really, and I really mean that, because it's a hard time for all of us, and we have to do that. Look after your colleagues as well. We'll see you same time next week here. Take care.
This is a big day for us at Matflix. We have finally cleared all the hurdles to get onto Open Athens for access in universities, trusts, companies, and anybody else that uses those kinds of systems. So if you're at university, if you're a teacher, if you're a student, then you can get Matflix onto your Open Athens system and begin to access everything. We've published over 1,000 maternity and midwifery videos over the past few years, and they've been watched in over 180 countries. But everyone fed back that searching through them and trying to pull them together into presentations was something they would like us to do, and to improve the cataloguing. So we're now launching expert box sets, and we'll be giving access to people through open access to the huge archive of 1,000 of some of the best presentations from maternity experts around the world. The thing about these box sets is that they allow you to find presentations by topic. They include invaluable research indexes and workbooks, and they provide you with video content you can trust. Besides Sue McDonald's work in curating the original programs and recordings, the box sets have been edited by Jenny Hall, former editor at The Practicing Midwife, and somebody that many educators will know from her time in Bournemouth. It also saves time and money for educators and employers. It's from trusted experts, trusted selections that are manageable size, ideal for training and study, and you can use them, and we found people using them to rehearse for applying for jobs. And good for reflective learning. And we already have a whole string of box sets out, and we'll be releasing a new one almost every week through the rest of this year. So the new institutional subscriptions for universities and trusts are on Open Athens now. There's 3 levels of subscription, one just for students, one for students and staff who want to use it in teaching, want to use clips, and also want to point students towards it for the flipped classroom. And there's also institution-wide subscriptions, so not just for maternity and midwifery students, but for all those medical students, social science students, people doing women's studies, for whom what's happening in maternity and midwifery is really important. So this is a big step up for Matflix. It's a big new service. It helps fund the Maternity and Midwifery Hour and the festivals and keep those bits free. So I hope you'll look into it, and I hope you can champion it with your institutions. And again, a big thanks to Sue McDonald and to Jenny Hall for all their curating and editorial work.
The Maternity and Midwifery Forum brings you Matflix, video streaming from maternity experts. All your CPD and revalidation needs met in one place. Our expertly curated box sets are the perfect way to engage with the latest thinking, issue by issue. They make revalidation easy and are the perfect accompaniment to any project or university coursework. In addition to video from expert speakers across maternity and midwifery, there is easily accessible research and links to the latest government policy documents. Our reflective questions at the end are the perfect primer for your revalidation. In the same way the Maternity and Midwifery form provides certificates to show that you have attended these festivals, we can provide certificates for those who have consumed the content of a box set and submitted their written answers to the reflective questions provided by our curator, Dr. Jenny Hall. Midwives, maternity professionals and students, do not miss out. Subscribe to Matflix today.
Box sets are now available via Open Athens and other international federated access with library institutional subscriptions packages at £1,950 a year. Individual subscriptions are also available at £8.99 a month and just £4.99 a month for students.
Check out the box sets at www.matflix.co.uk.